this scam, which is held by none other than our brother Justin Paulson, and I think he's from Cape Town. I'm not too sure, but I think he's from Cape Town. I know for sure that he studied at UCT, so I'd like to think he's from Cape Town. And essentially, we've called it well, this guy's called it a $2 billion scam because 2.5 billion is the amount which has been frozen in JPMarkets bank account, and hopefully some clients will get their money back. I'm not too sure if all of them will, because remember, with a lot of these liquidation proceedings, first is like the secured transactions, which is like the banks which loaned him money to start his brokerage account. And yes, you need millions and millions to start off your brokerage account, so you loan it and you borrow it. You don't start it off with your own money. Even to start a bank, you need lots and lots of money, because to end up having an account of 2.58 billion, you need to provide liquidity and things like that. So essentially, a lot of the money is going to first be paid off to his debtors, and then there's the preferential debtors, like anyways, and then by the time the money gets to clients, there'll be very little left, which is why there was an urgent liquidation order for them, because if they carried on operating the way they did, a lot of clients were going to lose a lot of money. And it's been called a scam for one reason. I think that's the best way to put it. Apparently, their platform was freezing, and they were claiming that they were having upgrades which they weren't having, and then people were struggling to withdraw their deposit, withdraw their profits, and their deposits weren't reflecting. They were having a lot of problems. And then whenever they tried to contact JP Markets, apparently the phones would just ring. And his own phone, apparently FSCA tried to call him, and his phone just rang and rang and rang, and he never answered. So that's essentially what's happening. And I want us to notice so many red flags with this guy, if you want to call them red flags. First of all, I loved this quote he put by his car where he said, "Always stay humble, be kind to others, hardworking." This is the same guy who was taking people's deposits, and they were just eating the money, honestly, to be honest. From what I heard, they were receiving deposits of up to 300 million rands a month. Can you imagine? That's why he was seriously holding the biggest brokerage in Africa. That's very true. Apparently, they were receiving 300 million a month. So, anyways, this is our brother Justin. Seems like a good family guy. And then the problems started when people were signing this petition. I'm not going to bore you with it. Essentially, it was just people complaining that they were struggling to withdraw their money, and they tried to contact him and his people. And this is when things started going sour, when people were losing their money, and because the platform would freeze, so people were losing their money, and they're trying to contact his team, trying to contact him, and he's a no-show. I actually did try to contact him, by the way, and I thought he would respond since we're both in Cape Town, went to the same university. I'm thinking this guy would actually respond. No response. And apparently, after the liquidation scandal, he was caught partying and living his best life. This is the same guy who was taking money from people. He doesn't care whether you guys lost your money or whatever. And as his status had, well, as his picture had said, stay humble and be kind to others. I find that very much contradictory to what he was saying. And this is the part which really did break my heart. Let me just find oh, yeah. The, so remember we had started with the petition of people complaining, and they were writing the petition to the FSCA. And so what ended up happening was this guy called Sahad Siddharth. Apparently, he's the guy who really brought down JP Markets, because he gave a testimony in court where he showed emails of Justin Paulson saying, "Don't you hate these toxic clients that make large profits?" So apparently, they would put them in their own separate group, and then they would increase spreads to a point where the winning trades would end up losing, and they wouldn't be able to close their trades. So first he would manipulate the spreads, and then they would essentially freeze the platform. And I think I did talk about this in another video on my past channel, which was that if you look at JP Markets' terms and conditions, it says that if their platform freezes, you do not get your money back, you lose your money. And I was like, that's very insane, because this guy could wake up and just say the platform froze. He could switch off his entire platform and just say, "Hey, the markets, the platform just froze because of some big news or something. We don't know. And that's what makes things very hard. So essentially, if this guy hadn't testified, I don't think there would have been a winning case against him, because the judge, if you read it, it's an 86-page judgment. If you read it, the judge is like, listen, it's really hard to actually see manipulation. It's really, really difficult. Even when some trader was saying that they were getting higher spreads than everyone else. That's very hard to tell, because how do you know that you are getting higher spreads than everyone else? It's very subjective. And it was this guy's email, who was the head of trading operations, who essentially blew the whole whistle. And then on top of that, what made things worse was that JPMarkets didn't have a license. They weren't licensed with the FSCA, believe it or not. They hadn't renewed their license, I think, for 16 months. From what I hear from the judgment, it was 16 months. They were given 16 months and they didn't get a new license from the FSCA. And I think that's what really bothered the judge. To be honest, I don't think he was too bothered with the manipulation and people losing money, even though people are going to say that's why JPMarkets was closed. It was really because of the licensing issue and the fact that apparently he was mixing his own money with the business's money. And so, since obviously the business is making tons of money, he was attaching that account to his account, which is like a sin in accounting and corporate governance. I won't bore you with that stuff, but that was the biggest. Those were the biggest issues. And then FSCA joined in and said they don't have a license. And it's absolutely just sad when people lose their money. I won't even lie to you. It's really sad, especially when these people end up posting, be humble, be kind, when they're eating people's money. I think it's actually quite sad when you have 2.5 billion rands. Can you imagine how much money that is? And apparently they've referred the matter to the National Prosecuting Authority to have him criminally liable. So essentially, that he could go to jail, which I think is the best punishment for people like this, because he doesn't even have to pay you guys off. And another thing, they didn't talk about this in the article, but from the judgment, what was said was that apparently he had a conversation with someone from his legal team, and he was saying, is there something in our contract which will stop us from paying these guys, the clients, you guys, their money? So once the liquidation started and all these problems were starting, he was already looking at the terms and conditions to avoid paying clients money. And I think essentially he's going to get away with it. But that was the point. He was saying, can we get away with not paying these guys their money back? Which I think is just absolutely horrible, which is why I think he should be arrested, and he's been banned from the industry completely. It's not just that the company has been liquidated, he can't start a new brokerage, he might actually end up in jail. It's actually quite serious. Um, yeah, I think that's, and oh, yes, exactly. One thing I do want to talk about. I mean, I wanted to know something. Maybe it's just me who just thinks this is just very weird. I've noticed this with a lot of like scams and brokers and things like that. They have so many accolades and awards that they won. Um, South Africa's fastest growing broker, South Africa's best broker, most transparent broker. Who's giving these awards? International Finance, Global Business Outlook. And I'm wondering who's giving these awards, because if these people are getting awards, how come they're being arrested for these scams and all of this? I'm starting to think that they pay for these awards or they make them up. One of the two. Either they pay for them or they essentially just they make them up and they give themselves awards. I mean, there were weird things on his Instagram, like, for example, 2 hour withdrawal. This is all to entice people to deposit, but at the end of the day, your withdrawal would not take 2 hours. So he would post things like this to get people to join and to deposit into his account. And then it wouldn't take you 2 hours to withdraw, it would take you weeks and weeks, and then you'd start calling and you wouldn't get a response. And this 200% bonus, if you don't know about 200% bonuses, something important which was also mentioned was this practice of 200% bonus. If you don't know why it was such a big thing in the judgment, was because essentially a broker will give you 200% bonus, knowing you will blow your account. Problem is if you invest $1,000 and then you receive 200% bonus, not 100%, 200% bonus. So say you deposit 1,000, you get say 3,000. If you blow that 3,000, right? Hypothetically, the 2,000 is hypothetical. So if you blow that money, essentially they can claim 2,000 from your bank account because they have all your details. And that was another big issue, which is that they give you large bonuses so that essentially they'll end up taking more from you. It's crazy, but it's true. You don't think about it. And don't ever chase a broker because they have tons of bonuses. Those bonuses are nothing to smile about. And that's why I think he was one of the biggest market makers, was because he was offering 200 bonus, and people obviously were running there because they were thinking, oh, we're getting big bonuses, when in reality it was just so that they could take more money if you lose. um so he'll post things like this of people winning, but then at the end of the day, when the he doesn't talk about how his platform freezes, he doesn't talk about how people can't withdraw, he only posts positive things. Ash, more awards. They never run out of awards, these people. They're always winning awards. Then they have WhatsApp groups. Again, this bonus nonsense, 200% bonus. You weren't allowed to comment on his Instagram, which is very weird. I find that very strange when you hide comments away from your Instagram. It's very weird. He was also hosting these IB agreements uh parties or meetings, and basically I think that's very strange. If a market broker is hosting these IB agreements, we're going to talk about one of these IB agreements with this guy, Fest FX. And so these IB guys basically promote this broker and get their students to deposit with JPMarkets, which allegedly is one of the worst brokers, but apparently it's winning awards left, right, and center. It's been a long run, guys. It's really been a long run to get JPMarkets closed. I had a big issue with their YouTube channel because there was this guy who was teaching, and I was like, some of the stuff he was talking about, I was really like, why is this guy even talking? Like, it didn't make a lot of sense for me. I think they just picked a random guy and they're like, go teach these guys the basics. And then once people know the basics, then they dive in with their money. And realistically, for someone with very little experience, it's just a recipe for disaster. Anyways, guys, from the time of petitions and people complaining and complaining, it's been a long time to have um, Justin Paulson and his crew shut down finally. And don't think that he cares about you guys. He was partying when the liquidation order was granted. He'll be partying after you guys don't get your money back. He really honestly doesn't care. And be careful about brokers like this, is all I'm trying to say.